This is IBM Museum, and one of the topics I want to cover in this upcoming year is the transfer of files between systems using the parallel port. Now, when the PS2s first came out, IBM introduced this so-called data migration facility, and I've heard of an LGR video, still haven't found it yet. He talks about that, says, hey, there's a facility in this whole box. I do have the contents of this box set here on the bench, including the dongle piece. But what this is intended for is the systems at that time, of course, were very commonly, were the PCs, the 5 1/4 inch diskettes. And so IBM, with the PS2s having a 3.5 inch, they had a way to where you connected up a printer cable from the older system, and that connected into this dongle piece that was attached to the PS2. And of course, PS2s introduced those bi-directional ports as well. Then you ran a program, the send program, on that system with the 5 1/4 inch diskettes. And this could even have a hard drive. It went through and covered the aspect of transferring, of course, the DOS operating system files, or files done under the DOS operating system. You didn't want to transfer the operating system files themselves or overwrite anything that you had on the PS2s, but it was just a mechanism for doing so. Now, there is a page of information. I'll go through it. I'll pull that up in just a moment, but they go through and cover what that data migration facility does. And there is a pinout. I mean, that's a very good show of how exactly what's going on there. Sending system over the parallel printer cable, running a program. Now, IBM included the receive file, the program that received the files, and this is strictly one way only from the sending system to the PS2 that was receiving it. But the receive program is on all of the reference and starter diskettes of the PS2 series. And of course, that is on the Ardent tool for being able to download that independently from having the reference diskette or a starter diskette. And of course, this can be done with other systems as well. There's the interconnections of how this would be set up. And I believe even this manual is archived as well, showing you how to do things, the process. And I'll go through, I'd like to, and of course there were later programs and methods, and the manufacturers went through and produced cables, their own cables for that transfer mechanism that didn't have this dongle. This does have the pinout up on the page it'll show, and then you went through and, of course, connected in where you had the printer cable. And IBM's just using the standard cables that were available at the time as a way to go through and do that. And with that pinout, of course, the later manufacturers, they were able to reduce that just strictly to a 25-pin connector. And I intend to go through, and even with the aspect of being able to go through and possibly having a different sort of sending program to be able to use the USB to parallel converter. So it could even be a much newer system. And of course, when IBM initially did this, they were planning for an older system, or the system with 5 1/4 inch diskettes, sending it to the newer PS2s. In this case, I'm actually looking at going back to where you're using a newer system to go through and get the files on that PS2 that was the newer system. So let me go through and bring up the data migration facility page. Okay, so here is the page at the Arden tool, and this quote from Clint of LGR, I haven't found this video. Maybe somebody can go through and list it in the comments or find it otherwise. And I hopefully will have a chance to see him in a few weeks down at Computer Reset in Texas, and I can ask him where that video is. Or, I mean, I've gone through and looked and looked and looked. I haven't found out where he went through and reviewed it. But it does have the programs on that page, the copy35.com for the sending system, and receive35.com utility for the receiving side on the PS2s. And that, again, that file for receiving is on the star diskettes and reference diskettes of the PS2s. They have the data, the pinout, and the process for going through. And I'll probably even go through with a multimeter for some of the other cables that I have and show that, just to kind of reduce it so you don't necessarily need that dongle utility that IBM had in the data migration facility package. And these images are straight from that manual that I showed. And then the process and the limitations of this are at the bottom of that page. And I'll include a link to that page in the video description. So the cables that, and I mean, there was the products like Lap Link and things like that. And there was also, of course, mechanisms that went through and used the serial port on systems to transfer files. I'm going to go through and hide the built-in webcam just so I know I have the full field of view here to be able to show this. And this is actually marked as a PC Anywhere cable, but it does have the two ends with the pins and this bright yellow cable. I can go through and look at a little bit of the pinout. There were other cables. This is even a 10-foot. The label probably has the price from back in the day of $8. And it says, it's a 10-foot PC to PC DB25. And again, those connections identified there as a parallel data transfer cable, DOS and Windows. So what utilities would have been included with Windows itself, but of course you could have utilities that did that. So I'm just looking at, the cables that are out there going through, so this dongle doesn't have to necessarily be used. And then also, I mean, this does even have the Centronics 36 pin that was standard for printer cables that would go into the dongle, but a very similar apparatus like this that could be used for transfer via USB even to the system like the PS2 and receive those files. And of course, this can be used in other than PS2s, but it takes advantage of the bi-directional ports that were on there, and it was a way to go through and to get the migration, so called migration, from the 5.25-inch diskette that were common on those PCs and PC ATs at the time, and get it over to the 3.5-inch format that you had on the PS2s. So if you thought that this video was informative and enjoyed it, go ahead and click on that like button, please. And by all means, subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. Recommend it to your friends that are interested in this sort of content. But this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.